How to write a bad story. What is a bad story? To put it simply, a bad story is how your character became the person they are, their memories and experiences, and the major events of their life, and most importantly, how they got to the start of your campaign. How do you start? Writing a bad story can seem very daunting, and that makes a lot of sense, but writing a bad story can be broken down into a few key points. Firstly, what is their main goal? As people, we always have something that we are trying to accomplish. Maybe finishing a video game you forgot about, or reading more books. Your character's goal is what gives them drive, what they wake up for. And it really helps you roleplay them, and you set it up with your backstory. Maybe your character always wanted to become a knight and slay monsters, and now they finally can. Even while the plot is progressing, they will still be trying to achieve this goal. In your backstory, you can write about your character's current goal and what they've done in the past to try and achieve it. Second, what is their personality and how did they form it? A character who has been living in the forest all of their life, completely alone, would have no social skills whatsoever, because they were in isolation and have never taught to another person. In my How to Roleplay Your D&D Character video, I talked about changing your personality to fit you, but only if it's explained by an event. The same idea applies here. Maybe your character is a rogue, and they always know when someone is lying. How did they learn to do this? Maybe since they've been around criminals all of their life, over time they've learned how people look when they're lying. Write about events that shaped your character's personality, because your character's personality doesn't come out of nowhere. Third, how did they get trained in martial combat or spellcasting? Maybe your wizard was an apprentice under an archmage for a couple years, and that's how they learned magic. Magic or martial combat is a big part of your character, and how your character learned it can be a very big part of your backstory. Fourth, are there any key events in their backstory that cause something special about your character? For example, maybe as a child you got cursed by a local necromancer terrorizing your village that causes you to be chased by undead wherever you go. Key events like this are very powerful tools to use when role-playing your character and for your dungeon master to incorporate into the story. Fifth, and finally, how did they get to the start of your campaign? Let's say you meet in the tavern of a small town deep in a mountain range. Nobody, unless for a very specific reason, will go there. It's isolated, very hard to get to, and not useful. But you've heard that there's a big criminal underground in this town, and you traveled there to find out more about it. This gives you a reason for you to be there, and you have a current goal in mind to investigate this criminal underground. An example backstory. Kolthar Nolken. As a boy, he was trained to fight by his father because one day he could not protect his son. One day he got lost in the woods and a bear found him. He would be doomed if it were not for his father fighting the bear valiantly until the end. He ran and never looked back. It haunts him till this day. He vowed to scour the land hunting monsters and beasts so his fate would not befall another ever again. Kolthar's backstory explains how he knows how to fight and his personality. His father sacrificing himself gave Kolthar a personality that focuses on fighting monsters and protecting others. His father also haunts him because he feels that it was his fault his father died, which should be used to great effect in the plot by the dungeon master. Even though this backstory is rather short, it provides some useful information for a player to roleplay Kolthar and for the dungeon master to use. Making it usable for your dungeon master. Making a usable backstory for your dungeon master boils down to a few things. Firstly, make some open-ended events, or some with a bit of mystery. For example, maybe as a child, your parents gave you a magical amulet before they mysteriously disappeared. The amulet was really special to your character, but one day a thief stole the amulet, and you haven't seen it for years. Your dungeon master could use the amulet in the plot as a special item involving a magical plan to usurp the king's throne. Another thing is something that you should be doing already, having events that define your personality. These events, if figured out by, let's say, the villain, it could be used to manipulate your character, or your personality could be used to lure your character into a trap. If your character would try to save their friends no matter the cost, they might run into a trap without thinking. Your Dungeon Master can use your backstory to make things more impactful by revealing things about your backstory your character didn't know. Your character might learn that the big events of their life were all set up in a plan to control them, or that a plan by the villain messed up and affected someone they knew instead of them. The last and most important thing of making your backstory usable for your Dungeon Master is length. People, when writing or talking about backstories, often joke about their backstory being 20 pages long. And that is a fatal flaw in their backstory, because the longer that your backstory becomes, the less likely you are to remember it, and it becomes a lot more difficult for your Dungeon Master to use. So make sure that you include everything that you want in your backstory, but try to keep it a reasonable length, because a 20-page backstory is almost entirely useless, because there's too much information to keep track of. Keep your backstory concise, impactful, and useful. That's all for this video. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video, and have a good one.